Katie, welcome to the podcast. It's so good to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited.
Well, cool. Well, okay. So, Katie, you are Katie Zuverink of Katie Zuverink Consulting, and you specialize in collaborative divorce and mediation services. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a lot, right? Like it's kind of a mouthful. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So collaborative divorce and mediation are something that I just became so passionate about. I started as a children's therapist and parenting specialist about a decade ago. And it really led me to working with families that were going through divorce. Because I really felt like I was getting to families just on the other side of something that had been so difficult and that had been unnecessarily traumatic in and of itself. And that the court system had really done some damage that just was not necessary. And
Mm.
so I learned about different processes for getting through divorce, and became really involved in kind of this different movement, this different way of going about divorce. And I just am really passionate about it. It's kinder, it has a lot of integrity, it's thoughtful, and it's really just this way of rearranging families that have come to kind of this realization that they must separate into two different households. There's not an option for them to stay in the same household together, and that they want to do that well for their children, and they want to co-parent beautifully. And so I just, nothing makes me more excited. I love, 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 love the work I do. And so that's what led me to what I'm doing. So I have the families that I work with I work with tons of families that have kiddos.
So, you said movement. Is it actual movement? Is there a name for this type of work or, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, if you were to ask um, around, you could go and talk to any family law attorney, um, and say, okay, so what are the different ways of getting divorced? And they could walk you through, a handful of options. Um, One of them is really, they say litigious, which is like really adversarial. So it's kind of what you see in the movies, where it's like, we're going to fight about all the things and the money,
Yes.
and
Got it.
we're going to saw the kitchen table in half,
Yes.
you know?
Okay. Yep.
And then it seems that, mediation's been around for a while, since about the 80s. It gained some steam in the 90s. And it really is becoming more and more common. Collaborative divorce is really gaining more steam, as well. And I think because the generations that we're seeing now are much more mental health minded, they're more interested in um, people working creatively as a team towards things. There's less of an interest in fighting. Law schools are becoming more open to different creative ways of helping families transition. And so there is a movement to doing things differently. So yeah, I got kind of swept up in it, and I'm in love with it, and I talk to everybody I can about it. So yeah.
Well, and I'm so glad that you got swept up in it because it sounds like there is such a need. And I love what you said just about people being into mental health and focusing on that. And I hate that it's taken as long as it has, but I'm so glad you're there. I could ask so many questions just about what specifically it is you do. Uh, it sounds like you actually are, since you're on kind of the other side, you're dealing a lot with blended families. Is that a safe assumption? Um,
Yeah, absolutely. So part of what I do, We see, so I work a lot with families who, because I do lots of parenting planning work, then I see a lot of families come back through about, 3 to 5 years later, who have moved into sort of the next phase of their life in which, we have new partners, we have new spouses, which means we have our blended families.
Let's take it on blended families. Do you think there is one misconception or multiple misconception that people have on blended families? And if so, what are some of those?
Yeah. So this one is just wildly fascinating to me. Kind of the more that I think about it, the more it's just so pervasive. And I think it is so outrageous,
Mm,
right? So this concept that we will have two people who either we've got one kiddo from a previous relationship or marriage, or two kids from separate families, or um and there will be a new marriage, and then we will quickly become a new family unit. And everyone will have a quickly intimate and connected relationship, and we will all be one big happy right away. Everyone's supposed to do everything together all the time, and it's all going to be, snuggles and best friend time, and it will be happy and wonderful all the time.
mm,
And that if you're not that way, that something is wrong with your family.
or your marriage or this new marriage.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, like, can
It's
you
so
imagine?
funny. Yeah. No, I can't.
Like,
And
really, but if you think
honestly,
about it, like in the movies, right?
I was about to say, it's just like the movies, just like you were saying the other way around with ugly divorces. Like that is kind of how it is in the movies. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you,
Everybody's schedule just falls into place together. And
yes,
yeah.
exactly. And so that one just kind of cracks me up because everybody really sort of has this conception that this is going to happen. And I think it is so, it's really pretty unfortunate. Like on one hand, I think it's so comical. And then on the other hand, when you have folks come in that are really in so much pain because they really thought that would be how it happened, how it would happen. Um, and then they get here and they're so confused because that is not what has happened in their family. Um, and so we say, yes, of course. Of course, that's not what happened, and that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay.
So
Um,
when they come to you, are they usually coming to you because maybe one of the kiddos is acting out, or are they coming to you because they're like, our marriage is in trouble? Like, how are they when they're walking in your door? Is there um a common request or a common reason that door is open and to come and see you? Is it more on the kid side or is it more on the parent side? And then do
mhm,
you have a specialty or are there any I don't know. Yeah, how does
mhm.
that all work? So once
Yeah,
they're like, "Okay, it isn't like the movies. Let's go see
yeah,
Katie."
yeah, right, right, right. So I think it's a mix. I think that a lot of the time what you'll see is um folks come in and they'll say, we have we like the couple, so it'll be, a biological dad and a stepmom, the couple, and then a biological daughter of the dad. The daughter doesn't come, but the couple comes, and they say, we have a problem we don't know how to solve. The daughter is behaving in this certain way. Stepmom will say, I think he needs to do this. He says, that's not fair because I've never done it this way. She doesn't understand my relationship with my daughter. Daughter is maybe 13, right? And so what has happened is so incredibly complex because the couple needs to feel so connected And there's a hierarchy there, right? Where they need to be on the same page. But the biological father and daughter are always going to feel very connected. You hope, right? And that's really important. And so we want to foster that, and we want that to be okay. And we want that to be supported by everybody. And so how do we help stepmom to feel heard and respected? How do we help daughter, whose developmental job right now is to separate a little bit from family, because at 13, their whole job is to become their own person.
Mhm.
Like, how do I do that? They
Right.
certainly don't do it gracefully at 13. Like, they're
Mhm.
a hot disaster mess, and they're
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
socially terrible
Yes.
at
Yes.
everything.
I'm thinking of myself at 13. Yes.
Right, exactly, exactly. Um, and so it's super complex. And so it's so hard to say, because Taffy, it could be that. It could be that the couple is functioning pretty well together, and they have a biological, or they have a child that is one of the that is the child of one or the other of them, that is really having a very hard time, because they feel like if they accept the new step parent, they're somehow betraying their other biological
Mm.
parent. And so it is so complex that it really takes fully understanding the family. And I think there are these developmental phases that every step family kind of goes through. And it kind of takes really understanding. This is what, I work with my associates on, like really understanding where each family is in their developmental stage. And then how do we help them understand that and kind of move through that into the next one with each of their kiddos? Does that make sense?
For sure. And it sounds like there's so many different nuances and even possibilities of outcomes depending on ages of the kiddos, but then also, yeah,
And
ages of the new marriage. And I'm just thinking, as I was thinking, as you were talking, I was thinking through all the different scenarios that could be walking through your door, and how it sounds like, I mean, it really is a specific plan for each family, um,
absolutely.
of what you do, I'm sure. You mentioned kind of the stages. Is there, even though these are all kind of different scenarios, different families, different dynamics, is there a stages that you kind of help to take people through, or stage goals for you, um, as their therapist, that, okay, this is where I want to get them to next. And then if we get to this point, kind of in healing or discovery or whatever it is, that we can go on to this next thing. Do you have anything else to say about those stages? That was kind of interesting to me when you mentioned that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we do, and so as not to just bore you to tears, I'll give you kind of like the flyover, right?
Okay.
So every this one I love this one. Every step family has kind of this honeymoon phase, right? So there are six. Again, like, I'll give you the
Okay.
flyover. So honeymoon phase, which we can all guess is like, and these are typically from the parents' perspective. Everybody's gonna like each other. Sure, we may have some bumps, and but pretty much everybody's gonna be it's gonna be fine, and everybody's gonna appreciate each other, and um, the kids will come to understand that this is just such a great decision. Okay. So then, so that's the first stage. The second stage is when reality sets in. And so this is when, like, normal everyday things start to feel like the world is caving in. All right. So kids start to feel like any show of kindness to their step parent is a betrayal to their biological parent that is not living there. Okay. And then, so the parents in the newly blended home can't come to an agreement about how the kids in that home should be disciplined. Right. So that is super, super normal. We have different cultures about how we're going to do chores, about what time bedtime is, about how long we brush our teeth, about who should scoop the dog poop in the backyard. Is that appropriate for children to do? What if they get a bacterial infection, right? Like things like this that are like, in your house, that may be a given. And in this other house is like, what is wrong with you? Why would you have a child do that? Right?
And
Okay.
when you say cultures, you're not even meaning like American and non-American or South American and North American. You're talking about just family cultures. Like when you
Yeah,
say cultures, like
exactly.
just, wow. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So like in my family, we keep 3 different kinds of milk in the fridge. Right. And like when somebody comes to my house, they're like, really? You need all those? And I'm like, yes, thank you so much. But that
Mhm.
feels outrageous to some people, right? Okay.
Right. Got it.
So that's the first 2, right? So we got honeymoon, we got reality setting in. We got the next one is gaining insight. So this is like a healthy place to be. Okay. So parents start to begin to understand that more structure is needed. So they start seeking out other resources. So books. Oh, we need some co-parenting books. How are we going to do this? Start to work on creating boundaries, like between the marriage and the kids. Okay. We need some time with just you and me, right? Where our kids aren't around all the time. We're prioritizing our marital relationship. We're beginning to establish there's some hierarchy here
Yeah.
between like the couple and then there's the kids. So we make the structure and the routine and then the kids follow it. So I, the mom, and my biological kids are not peers with me. My relationship is very important with them, but they don't make the rules with me. I make the rules with my new husband. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah.
And that's
You,
real hard.
I
So
was
in
about
my
to say, do you have a lot of
example,
adults? Yeah. That are
yep,
pushing back on that, like as adults,
absolutely.
the parents.
So in my example I gave you, right? So dad comes in and he says, stepmom is like, she needs to have more rules. And dad says, well, that's not fair. I haven't done it that way. But she's saying, I want to be part of the hierarchy. Stepmom says, right? I want to be part of this hierarchy, but biological dad's having a hard time because he wants to maintain this really close relationship and he doesn't know how to do that and hold a boundary. So that's part of that teaching, right? That we do is to help separate that out. So next step, right? So that's stage 3. So stage 4 is when our kids start rocking the boat. So we've set that structure and then the kids start pushing against it. And the reason that kids push against structure is because they want to see if it's safe. They want to see if it'll hold. They don't do that they don't do that consciously.
Yeah.
Um
So when you say that, like I'm still kind of picturing that first scenario of the 13-year-old daughter, right? But could a 4-year-old little boy be pushing those
absolutely.
boundaries? That's the
Oh,
unconsciousness that you're saying. Like,
absolutely.
okay, it's not just those teenagers or whatever.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely. And so it's bedtime. It's, well, you said I could only have 2 cookies, but what happens if I just take a third? Do you really mean what you say? Can I trust that you mean what you say? What happens if I just do it anyway? Will you freak out? Will you just let me do it? Right? So, like, what's real here? And again, it's not a conscious thing, but this is what kids do to figure out where the boundaries are. Are they where you said, or are they where I push them to?
Mm.
Um, so the best thing parents can do in this spot is to view each push as a place to see where we're I say it's like where we're calling attention to. So the kids are calling attention to someplace. So if it is hard, if it's like, so if a teenager blows past a curfew and then and it's fine and we handle it and then it's a done deal, okay, no problem.
Right.
If we continue to do it and we continue to do it and we continue to do it, then we have an area that has been called to attention. And now we have an opportunity to address it together.
I like the way you said that. Okay.
Right? So then our stage 5, and we're almost done, all right, is work through it. So usually, so parents, the biological and step, so within that same family unit, often with the help of a counselor in this spot, figure out a way to work through that painful situation together. And a lot of the time that biological parent has to take a step back sometimes to allow room for that step parent. If the conflict is between the step parent and the stepchild, that bio parent has to take a step back so that the two of them can work that out and they can begin to have a relationship that is more like genuine and real. And then that leads to that very last, like, awesome stage, which is like we can all have genuine relationships together because we have walked through the fire of real conflict. We have worked through it. We know that no one's going anywhere. I'm going to be here no matter what. We can safely address conflict and disagreements. Our relationship is stable. And so we can talk about hard things. We're not going anywhere. And so then we can, like, the couple becomes closer, the kids become closer. And so that's when, and honestly, so all the research says that whole 6-stage process takes between 5 and 7 years.
That was going to be my next question. Like, I'm thinking months, 18 months or something like that, 5 to 7 years.
5 to 7 years. 5 to 7 years.
So it's funny as you were talking through all that, when you were talking about phases 2 and 3, I could feel myself being tense. And then 5 and even 6, I actually kind of, my shoulders relaxed. And so if that process takes 5 to 7 years, do you feel like, um, if it's 5 to 7 years, then would it be safe to say that 3 years is really, really hard tenseness that as you were talking through it, that I was feeling in my body? Like, is it that intense or is it, I don't know. I guess, do you feel like everybody's different?
Absolutely. I think everybody's different. And I think we often have people in our offices that are like, things are mostly okay. And, we have moments that are tense, but it's mostly okay. And I think they're kind of in that, we're sort of getting to know each other, and we're starting to learn that, we have different preferences in parenting, but we're doing that slowly because we don't do a lot of conflict around here together, and so I think it really depends on the types of personalities, and
That's true.
I think all that's okay, and it totally varies by family. Um, and I think some families get there more quickly, and I think some families take a little bit longer. I think the takeaway is a lot of families don't make it past year 3. I was doing some research in preparing to talk about blended families, and what I learned was that the research shows that between 60 to 70% of families, blended families, those marriages do not make it past that 7-year mark. And so,
Really?
yeah. And so what we find is that the marriages that make it past that have a way higher percentage of success. And so, my theory is that if we make it into that, like, genuine relationships that are connected and we have this loving home, it's just the journey getting there is challenging. And
Mhm.
so I think it takes, my thought process is that if you can have the supports around you, if going in, this is going to be a challenge, it's going to be worth it. We're going to need patience. We're going to need to be kind. We're going to need to have a lot of grace for each other, all of us.
Mhm.
Um, and that it's not going to look like we got married and 6 months later, we're all best friends,
Mhm.
you know? Um,
So when you're seeing families, um, are they, is it very often that you see a family that you can catch them still in that honeymoon phase and say, this is going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. You know, like
mhm.
you just mentioned grace and patience. Like normally when you're getting people, getting families, when are you getting them? Like they're dying.
Um, we usually get them when after they've read a book and they tried some stuff and they still haven't figured it out yet,
Wow.
which is like amazing, and
Yeah.
tell them, look how far ahead of most people you are. Like
Sure.
you have tried so many things and you're clearly invested. Let's get this figured out.
Yeah.
And I will say, sometimes we do some of our counselors do premarital work, which I think is
Mhm.
honestly genius for
Yeah.
families going into a step family situation. I have a actually this is funny. I'm sitting here with a book right here. It's called The Smart
Yeah.
Step Family. I actually really, really like this book.
Yeah.
Ron Deal. Anyway, and it's a prep book about getting ready to be in a step family. And so anyway, I think there's some really good resources about preparing for that give you realistic expectations, which I think is really helpful. Um, and so if we catch them in premarital stage, we give lots of education about that.
Yeah. I love that resource of Ron Deal. I feel like he's kind of one of the leading guys.
Mhm.
I've heard his name for years, as it pertains to blended families. Since you're talking resources, do you have any other favorites besides you and your associates? Are there any other um, tips or cheat codes, or I don't know? Is there a way to
Wow.
skip one of the steps and go to the end?
Like a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a get out of jail free card. I think,
Okay.
one of the things that is just kind of pervasive in all of the research and the leading thinkers is that, when you're creating a step family, you inherently do not have the structural foundational time that that like brand new nuclear families have of creating the marital relationship before you have the children involved. And so you have stressors present that are not present at the beginning of a brand new romantic relationship where there aren't children. And so you just have you have a harder time in
Mhm.
blended families than you do if you're starting with just two people. And so that like we're bringing in one child at a time into a couple um, is a very,
Learning together, yeah, like,
yes,
learning together
exactly.
how to do this, yeah,
And creating
whereas
it
you're
together
creating it together, that's a good way to put it,
rather
kinda like
than
that
rather than
different cultures.
adapting, rather than
Yes.
adapting.
Yeah.
Um, you know, one of the examples that I think of is like, I never thought, Taffy, like I never thought that I would be an eat dinner on the fly kind of a family. Never. And you bet your butt that's what kind of family we turned into with like all of the sports and stuff that we got to get to. But if you
3
drop,
kinds of melt.
yeah, three kinds of milk family, get out of here.
Sorry,
But if you
sorry,
dropped
yeah.
me, if you dropped me into this family with none of the history and none of the like slow progression into this, I would be like, what do you mean we're having chicken nuggets and French fries for dinner? That's not acceptable. That would be a real hard start for me
Yeah.
if I hadn't had the progression into that of the last 10 years.
Even you just saying that in just now kind of feels to me like this is going to be okay. Like, even in this scenario that we've made up, I feel okay for this family because this is how they got there. you
I know.
know, I'm not mad at anybody anymore like I was when we started talking about our fake family, our fake blended family. But no wonder they're there. No wonder they're sitting in your office because they didn't get to create that together and create
Exactly.
culture and decide on what type of milk and,
Exactly.
spicy, not spicy chicken nuggets or whatever the case may
Exactly.
be.
Exactly right.
Is there anything maybe that we hadn't talked about, but you thought, oh, Taff, I need you to ask me about this? Is there anything else that you feel like you want to say in this episode about blended families? I mean, we'll be speaking more during this series on other parenting kind of nuances, but I don't know. Anything else you want to add about blended families?
For the blended family parents that are in the middle of it, in the thick of it, as much as it feels super frustrating for you, for us as adults, I think it feels at least that big for the kids.
Mm,
And I think that's really the hard thing to remember, because
yeah,
we see our kids like get up and go to school and then come home, and we're like, how hard could that be? Um, and so I think it's easy to forget that as hard as it is for us, it's at least that hard for them. And so if we can take if we can take a beat, if we can take a breath, if we can try to get centered, if you're a person of faith, if you can, um, be prayerful, if you can really be thoughtful, and then speak, and then address what's going on with your kiddo, I think it will really go a long way in keeping you um, centered on what's important.
mm,
Um, and that will really help you along and help your
yeah,
family along. Um, and that's hard to remember. And I have a ton of
yeah,
empathy for that, because it's hard for me. I have a whole
yeah,
degree in this, and so it's
yeah.
it's hard for me. And so I think, if as much as you can, and I get it that it's hard, as much as you can, it's super, super helpful. There's your Pasco. There's your get out of
There
jail.
you go. Okay. That's a good one. Not just in this, but in life, just take a deep breath and like you said, get centered. So I love that. That's a good word.
Yeah.
Um, and that will probably be the case every time that we speak on this during this parenting
It's true.
series. Like,
You can just
Katie,
copy
what
and
is
paste.
your one takeaway? Yeah. What is your
Yeah,
one takeaway?
copy and paste.
Um, okay. So you ready for the Ask a Therapist?
I don't know. Am
Okay.
I?
So
Scary.
yeah, I think you are. Actually, I got two questions from a grandparent of a newly blended family.
Got it,
So
I
this is
think.
a grandparent,
Okay.
and their child has a new blended family. So they have new grandkids.
Okay.
So in this question, um, the grandfather has a secret handshake with his grandchild that he already had, has grown up
Okay.
and knows and has always known this child's entire life. And so these new siblings come into the mix. What would you suggest? Does the grandfather need to now have a secret handshake with the new siblings? Or can the grandfather keep just the handshake with his first grandchild from
Uh-huh.
I don't even know what is
I
the
love
word.
this.
Is there a
Huh.
right way to say blended family and grandkids? Because they're not biological. Are they biological or step or
Huh.
how do we say that? Step grandkids, biological grandkids?
Yeah. 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 I
Okay.
like that.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay.
That's cool. Yeah. Okay. So I do have a thought about this. I think that it is absolutely okay for him to continue to have his awesome secret handshake with his biological granddaughter. That's
Okay.
amazing. And there are fabulous and amazing and wonderful, um, good connected feelings about that. That makes me so happy and I love it. And if someday the step grandsons are interested in doing that and they would like to do that, then I think that that is fine. I think that if that day comes, that is not to be rushed.
Okay.
Grandfather does not need to push that anytime soon, and would have a separate conversation with granddaughter about how that doesn't make her handshake any less special, and that it was hers and his first, and they will always have their very special handshake.
I love that.
He loves her so, so much.
Yeah.
And there is so much room in his heart, and their relationship is so special. Right. So what's very important is that we do not push new relationships too soon. Okay. So that's like pressure cooker.
Like the grandfather doesn't need to initiate that necessarily with the step grandkids, the new grandkids. Okay.
Absolutely.
That's good. Okay. That's good. I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Same family.
Okay.
Grandmother and grandfather are very solid in how they know how to discipline their biological grandkid. And if needed, they feel confident in that and know what their daughter and ex-son-in-law would do. And so with these new step grandchildren or new grandchildren, yeah, like what's the best way to navigate that? Is that something that you have dealt with yet? Or if it did, yeah. What words
Absolutely.
of wisdom do you have in that for
Yes.
them?
I would absolutely 100,000% have a conversation about expectations. So from both sides. And so it would be really, really clear in terms of what I think if I were the grandparents, I would ask, what are your expectations, or what are your expectations about discipline from us? This is how we have done it in the past. Here's what we are comfortable with. And here's what we're not comfortable with. And we want to support you. We love your boys. We want them to feel like part of the family. Here's how we function in our house. And we're willing to be flexible, and we want to be very loving. And here's what that looks like here. And how can we partner to best do that together, or whatever.
In this family, yes. And this is just one more question on that, because that does make perfect sense. In this family, the kids are all within 2 and 3 years apart, the biological and the step, now blended. And do you feel like, just kind of, again, they didn't ask this is me asking this. Do you feel like they need consistent discipline with all 3 children? Especially since they're the same age now, like if that means both cultures, family cultures that are now being blended, that they need to, now the parents need to come together and come up with a discipline plan, or do they continue to discipline their own kids? Or again, this is actually kind of an offshoot. This is me asking a question based off these grandparents thing, but
probably what I would do, Taffy, is I would, like, if these were people who were sitting in my office, I would probably have like a whiteboard up, or like a giant sticky note, like one of those like tablet things. And I would make okay, let's talk about house rules, and let's just make house rules for everybody. And then we'll make new ones. And so they can be the same as the old ones, or we can just make new ones. And so, and grandma and grandpa are involved, both parents are involved. And so we're all going to participate. What does everybody agree to? And so then if it's like, well, we don't like rough housing. Okay, what does that mean? Let's be very clear. So is Is it wrestling on the floor? Is it wrestling on the furniture? Wrestling on the floor is okay. Wrestling on the furniture is not. Wrestling outside, how do we feel about that? Right. And so like really being very clear so that the boys know, or that I've made up that they're boys, maybe. I'm not sure.
Oh, they're all boys. Yeah.
Okay. So that the boys know what exactly the expectations are, and then what will happen if we cross a boundary. And so if these are the house rules, then these are the consequences. And everyone is very clear, including the kids. Like they're not there for the meeting with the grownups, but then the boys will be walked through. If you choose to do this, then this is what will happen.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? And so like
Mhm.
everyone's super duper clear. And then there's no
Guessing.
surprises,
Yep.
nobody's building resentment or
Mhm.
frustration, and everybody has participated and they feel very heard.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I feel like it's even good for non-blended families, just families to probably revisit that every once in a while,
Yeah.
in a
Yep.
new season. So I love that. Clarity is kind, so
Mhm.
I love that.
Mhm.
Um, okay, we have time for one more question, and this question is from an aunt of a blended family. So there's a blended family. Her sibling is a blended family, a brand new
Okay.
blended family, and she is having a hard time even having feelings of love for her um, step niece and nephew,
Okay.
and they're kiddos still. So in this case, do you have any tips for her as an aunt who just cannot even conjure up love for these steps? Not that she
Yes.
doesn't, not that they're not lovable. They're
Mhm.
good kids and they're lovable. She's just having
Yeah.
a hard time loving them.
I really get that.
Mm,
Um, I really get that. And I think, I have a lot of respect um, for the ability to acknowledge that and be able to say it. And, that's hard and that's a vulnerable place to be. I have found that if you are able to spend a little bit of one-on-one time,
mhm,
with a kiddo, and you're not there, that child isn't having to fight for attention
mhm.
or having to, let's see, like in a family gathering type of situation, kids tend to run amok,
Yes.
and like they're kind of wild. Um, and they're breaking all the rules and they're trying to get lots of attention. And even my nephews, sometimes I want to like flick them in the forehead and be like, what is wrong with you? And I love them tremendously. And still sometimes I like don't, sometimes they drive me crazy. Um, and I find that if I spend one-on-one time with them, my affection for them grows.
Mm, yeah.
Because they are not having to fight for attention for other grown-ups. They're not having to fight each other. They're not having, so they can connect with me. I can connect with them. So I guess my short recommendation would be to try to spend a little bit of one-on-one time, like even
Mm,
just go get some ice cream, or if they're younger, it would be something
yeah.
like that. And I
Okay.
find that to be I find that to be pretty helpful. And
Yeah.
that is how we recommend, just in general, parents that are having a hard time connecting with kids, some more one-on-one time doing something that the child would like to do.
I love that.
Mm.
That's a good, that's a good word. And again, not just with stepkids. I think this is going to be a theme for us. You have all kinds of wisdom here. And so I'm thankful for you, Katie. And I'm just, yeah, I'm thankful. And I look forward to our further conversations about parenting. And if people want to get in touch with you and people want to learn about your mediation services and all the things that you specialize in, how can they find you?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, my website is just, kdzconsulting.com. And all my contact information is on there. And so it's
Perfect.
pretty easy.
Perfect. I want to thank you for joining us on Watershed Moments podcast. And um, thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah. So fun. Thanks, Taffy.